So today I am here with Chaos, my little ball python. I recently went over ball python care and I discussed how it is very common for ball pythons to go off of feedings. So I wanted to dedicate an entire video to this topic just because there's so much that goes into it. And a lot of keepers of ball pythons run into this issue, and there are so many different tricks to try. So I would like to cover that today. So today I'm going to be covering why your ball python might have stopped eating, different tips and tricks to get your snake eating again, when it's okay to assist feed and what it is, and when it's time to see a vet. So I'm going to start by covering why your snake might not be eating. The very first reason for ball pythons is stress. So if you have a very new ball python that you just purchased and you brought home, there's a good chance it's not going to eat right away and it may take some time. The best thing to do is to take that snake home and don't handle it. As hard as that may sound, because I know you're going to be so excited that you just got this new snake and you're going to want to hold it and take pictures with it and everything, but that's the worst thing you could do for your snake. What you want to do is make sure that the enclosure is fully set up, put the snake in it, and leave it alone. You're going to leave it alone for a week. You aren't going to be handling it or anything. After that week, you can try to feed. If the snake does not eat, then you put it back in the enclosure and try again in another week. You do not handle that snake whatsoever until it has eaten its first meal. If this is a snake that you haven't just brought home and you've had it for quite some time and it has just gone off of feeding, then the best thing to do is to check your husbandry. So with husbandry, you want to make sure that you have the proper hides. You want to make sure that they're the proper size hides. Ball pythons love to be in snug, tight places, so if you have a very large hide, try switching and using a smaller hide. That might help. Another thing is you want to make sure, obviously, that they have the heat, a cool hide, proper temperature, proper humidity, a water bowl. All of those things must be in check. If your husbandry is in check and your snake still is not eating, the other reason that it might not be eating is simply just because it's winter time. A lot of reptiles tend to go off of feeding and don't have much of an appetite during the winter, and ball pythons do that too. So that could be another reason. If that's again not your reason, it's not a new snake, your husbandry is on point, it's not winter time or cold whatsoever, then it's just possible that your snake has just gone off of feeding, because sometimes ball pythons like to do that. So next I'm going to be covering the things that you can try to get your snake to eat. The one thing that I just mentioned about the hides is very important. If you have larger hides within your enclosure, it's best to get the smallest hide that you possibly can for your ball python so that it feels extra snug in that hide. It gives it more security and it will make it less stressed out. Another way that you can fix that problem is if you do have a big hide and you don't want to buy a smaller hide for some reason, you can take newspaper and bunch it up into balls and put that in the enclosure and in the hide, so that way your snake feels extra snug within that hide, extra secure and less stressed out and more likely to eat. Another issue that I've noticed a lot of the time is that a lot of ball python breeders breed them in racking systems. So a lot of people buy ball pythons and they want to put them in a nice terrarium or a tank, and they want to be able to see that snake. But snakes feel very exposed when they're taken from a racking system and then put into a tank. So if your snake is not eating and it's in a tank, there's a very high chance that it's because it's just used to a racking system and it doesn't feel secure. So one way to fix that is to add a lot of foliage in the enclosure, extra hiding places to make it feel more secure, or you can literally just take a huge t-shirt and put it over the entire tank and black it out, so that way the snake feels more secure. It's not stressed out by seeing you all of the time, and maybe it'll be more likely to eat its food. So if you are starting off with a hatchling ball python, it's very important to inquire from the breeder whether or not that snake is switched from live to frozen thawed. If they are not, then you're going to have to feed that snake live in order to get it going. Hatchling ball pythons need the live prey in order to get established, and it's what they want when they start eating. They just typically won't go for frozen thawed, and that's just how it is. You're going to have to work on training them to switch over to the frozen thawed in time, which is why if you're a new keeper, it may be harder for you to just get a hatchling ball python rather than a more established ball python. If you're in the process of trying to switch your ball python from alive into frozen thawed feeding, or you just simply have a snake that isn't eating anything, ball pythons can be very picky about the food that they want to eat. So it's very important to try many different things. Some of them are picky literally about the fur color of the mouse that they're receiving. So try different colors if possible. If not, some of them don't want their prey to be wet. So if you're trying to feed a frozen thaw to a snake and they aren't taking it, you may need to thaw it out, let it dry off, and then re-warm up that mouse in order to get your snake to actually eat it. Because they do have heat pits which sense the heat in their prey when they're hunting. So when you're feeding the mouse, you want to make sure that it's a little bit warmer. That will get them more motivated to eat that mouse. Ways in order to warm up the rodent would be under a heat lamp. I've heard some people use a blow dryer, but honestly, I wouldn't recommend that because that might be a little too hot and you don't want it to be too hot and hurt your snake. So you just have to be very careful about that. I would recommend putting the mouse on a heat pad for a little while or under a heat lamp, and then you should be good to go. Some of them might prefer a freshly killed mouse. As sad as that sounds, it's sometimes just what you have to do. A lot of the time that's what's required when you're trying to switch your snake over from live to frozen thawed. And so basically it means that you're going to get a live mouse and you are going to have to kill it yourself and then feed it to your snake so that way they can start to be accustomed to eating something that is already dead. And it's really messed up. It's really sad. A lot of people don't want to do that. It's another reason why I wouldn't really suggest ball pythons for beginners, especially not a hatchling ball python. Something else that's really interesting to try would actually be to go to a pet store and ask them if you can have some bedding from the gerbils. Because ball pythons really like the scent of gerbils and they are more likely to go for their prey if it smells like it. So with that bedding, it will be scented with the gerbils from that enclosure. You're gonna take that bedding and rub it onto your mouse and then try to feed it to your snake. Maybe it'll do the trick and they'll actually go for it. It's something to try. Another thing to try would just to simply leave the mouse in overnight and hope that your snake eats it on its own. When I say this, do not leave a live rodent with your snake unattended ever. So this is strictly for frozen thawed meals only, because that's obviously not going to come back to life and come and hurt your snake. If you leave a live mouse with your snake unattended and your snake is stressed out and doesn't want to eat that mouse, it's probably just going to ball up and not do anything. And that mouse has really sharp teeth and claws and can cause a lot of damage to your snake. So absolutely never, never, never leave a live rodent with your ball python. And along with that, something else to try would be to take a paper towel roll and put the frozen thawed mouse in that and then leave it in the enclosure overnight and see if your snake will eat it on its own. Sometimes snakes just don't want to eat in front of you. They're stressed out by your presence and they don't want to eat off of tongs. So it's just something to try. By putting it in the paper towel roll, it will feel more secure going into the paper towel roll in order to eat. Something else to try, it depends on what time you are trying to feed your ball python. They are nocturnal, so they are going to want to come out and eat at nighttime. So something to try to make sure to do is just to feed your snake at nighttime. Again, if it doesn't want to eat off of tongs or whatever, you can leave it then overnight with your snake as long as it's not live. And then it might work. And then the very last resort thing to try would just to be to feed your snake a live rodent. A lot of people don't want to do this and they just refuse, but you honestly can't get a ball python and have it not eat and then just plan to never feed it anything live, because sometimes that is the only thing that they need in order to get going. Especially if you have a hatchling ball python, because hatchling ball pythons need the live rodents in order to become established and healthy and grow. They just simply won't go for the frozen thawed. So how long can your snake go without eating? Ball pythons, for babies, the hatchlings cannot go for long whatsoever. You don't want your hatchling ball python to go months without eating because they will die. They need that nutrition. It's very, very important for them at that time to be growing. So without the food, they will die. So something else to try that I honestly don't like to recommend, it is only for experienced keepers, somebody that has done this already before. It's called assist feeding. So assist feeding is when you have a ball python that is not eating and it just won't eat the live, it won't eat anything, and you really need to get it going, otherwise the animal will die and its life depends on it. What assist feeding is you take the mouse and you open your snake's mouth and you put the head of the mouse into the mouth of your snake and you push it in very, very slowly until the snake starts to eat it on its own. This is very important. You do not want to do this if you don't have experience, because shoving a mouse quickly down a snake's throat in some way, you can really hurt your snake. And you can also hurt their teeth as well. So you don't want to do this if you don't have experience. So I just want to throw that out there. Assist feeding is very, very last resort for someone that knows what they're doing. So the last part that I would like to talk about is when it is time to see a vet. So because the hatchling ball pythons need to eat, they can't go months and months without eating. It's very important that if they start to lose weight or they just simply aren't eating for over a month, and you have tried everything, they won't eat live, or you aren't comfortable assist feeding, then you should take them to a vet and have a vet assist feed them in order to get them going. When it comes to more established, bigger ball pythons, they can go months without eating and be completely fine. I've heard of ball pythons literally not eating for like a year and they're totally fine. Sometimes they just stop eating and it's very normal. However, that is not always the case. So you can't just be like, well, if that person's snake didn't eat for a year, my snake can do that too and it's going to be okay, because that is not always the case. When it comes to bigger ball pythons, if your ball python starts to lose weight, that is when you have to see a vet. So it's as simple as that. If your ball python just goes off of feeding, the best thing to do is to weigh it every single week and keep track. When that snake starts to lose weight, that's when it's time to go see a vet, because it could be parasites or something going on that's very bad for your snake, and your vet will need to help you out with that at that point. So that's pretty much everything for today. If you know any other tips and tricks to get your ball python to eat, please leave it in a comment so that way it can help out whoever's watching this video and they can read it, because I know that there's so many other things to try out there and I just listed a few that I'm aware of. So please leave a comment if you know anything. So I hope that this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.